when we're trying to get these started. So appreciate you being able to adapt to the changing schedule. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to bounce back and forth between my PowerPoint, and my PowerPoint is mainly here to remind me of what I want to talk about during the session, but I'm going to try to do this live and a nuts and bolts kind of thing as much as possible. I'm going to go through what I do to search for grants, and I'm happy to entertain other people's suggestions. I know we have some experienced folks here that grant seekers and grant acquirers. So any feedback or conversation about that is great. I think I've already lost my my chat window, so that will be interesting. Let's see where to go. Just a minute. Where to go? Okay, hold on a second. All right, so I see my chat window. I'm going to move it down here. All right, so today, let me get this. The agenda is to, I'm going to just speak briefly about ideas, which I think are important to getting funding. Then I'll just review very briefly the types of funders, what kind of help there is at the University of Redlands. And then I will jump into a nuts and bolts kind of thing about going through various kinds of sites. First one's going to be grants.gov. Then we'll get into agency websites such as NSF and NEH and NIH. I'll talk about GrantStation, which is a search site that I use for finding funding possibilities, Philanthropy News Digest, and then getting on mailing lists. And then I'll talk about future funding Fridays. Okay, I think if you could, everyone could mute your phones or your audio, that would be great. Otherwise, I might have to find you and mute you if I hear extraneous noise. But thank you. And if you have a question, type it into the chat, and feel free to unmute too if you have something you want to shout out. So I just want to mention this workshop will not get into idea generation. I'm actually going to start that in our next Funding Friday. So I'm actually putting the cart before the horse in a way, because really the way you start is to start with your ideas, get your ideas settled, get a project that you want to get funded in your mind, and get that formulated before you look for funders. Otherwise, you could be chasing funders and adapting yourself to what you think funders want, which is not a good strategy for going after money. So I encourage you to work on your ideas first before you start looking for a funder. And the next session, which I'll talk about at the end of this workshop, we'll start getting at that. However, if you want to post some ideas you have for that you'd like to get money for in the chat, please do. I'll see if I can tailor some of the examples as I move along to match what you're looking for. Okay. So there are many different types of funding available. Funders, federal government, which is what I've worked mostly in my career, my grant writing and grant project management career. Also state and local governments, private foundations, and then you can get businesses and nonprofits. And then there's a whole area of crowdfunding that's being used to fund projects that I'm not, wouldn't consider myself to have any expertise in. And there are other folks here on campus that would have that kind of expertise. Also, then you can get into relatives and friends and anyone else who can give you money. But in general, we're looking at federal, state and local governments, and then private foundations. Here at the University of Redlands, we have a sponsored programs office that's staffed by me. serve as the director, and my role is grants triage. People come to me with project ideas, and I determine what kind of funding might be most appropriate, or if it's something that's more of a university-wide priority, then I'll move it over to Anu Diekman in the Foundations and Corporations office. And otherwise, I'll work with figuring out the best kind of funder that might be valuable for the kind of project that you're working towards. I also do pre-award preparation, so I consult with people about formulating their grants and getting their grants ready for submission. And then for federal and other types of grants, I do actually push the button and do the submission or approve a submission. And then Katie Milsom is actually the most important person. She helps you figure out your budgets and manages the budgets and does a lot of the post-award compliance once you get your grant. So and the budgeting, figuring out your budget and justifying your budget's one of the most important parts of the grant seeking process. Well, I shouldn't say the most important, but it's a very important process, part of the process. And so we will have a session dedicated to that later on this spring. But anyway, Katie is the person that handles the budgeting, and we work together on getting grants prepared and then structured for submission. We have a website which has been renovated recently, has a number of tabs that you can go through. So I invite you to take a look at the Sponsored Programs website. We get into talking about the process, roles and responsibilities. There's a fact sheet that has all the stuff you need when oftentimes funders will want certain types of information about the university. We have it all organized under that tab. We have our various documents, forms, links, and templates. And then I have an opportunities page, which I'll get to in a second. And presentations such as this one will be on the presentations tab, as well as the PowerPoint that I put together, and then our contact information on the contact tab. Okay. I encourage you to join the Sponsored Programs email list. It's an Office 365 group. So if you go to the website, the Sponsored Programs website, which I didn't put the link here, but I just usually Google it myself, University of Redlands Sponsored Programs to get the link. Then there's a link there where you can click and join the Sponsored Programs email list and get news that I send out every week or so. Usually it's been about 10 to 14 days that I'll send out an email. And what the email contains is a list of opportunities that I have identified that might be relevant to the University of Redlands community. So, and this is a document that's available from the Sponsored Programs website. I do have the link up there. You do have to have a University of Redlands login to be able to access this, but the link covers the document which I updated on February 24th, and it's due for another update early next week. Covers federal opportunities and then private foundation grants that might be of interest to the U of R community. So I encourage you to get on that list or just check out the website every once in a while and click on the opportunities tab, because this is one easy way to search and see what might be relevant to the University of Redlands community. Okay. All right, so let's get into nuts and bolts. The first nut or bolt that I'm going to talk about is Grants.gov. And I'm going to go off to the website here now and get on the Grants.gov site, which hopefully will come up here in a second. So if you type in grants.gov into your browser, you will wind up at this page. Grants.gov is like the clearinghouse for all federal grants in the federal system. Most agencies, well, all federal agencies proposals can be submitted through grants.gov. The only one that I know that allows submissions outside of grants.gov is the National Science Foundation, which has their own system, but you can also submit through grants.gov to the National Science Foundation. But this is a system that's been developed over the past 10 years or so by the federal government and is now the standard for all federal submissions. I encourage you to register on the site, which there's a register link in the upper right corner of the little window that you see. And it's a pretty easy process. There's even a little video that you can go through, which I listened to this morning that I almost decided to play on this presentation because the jazz track accompanying the narration is actually pretty good. But it's fairly standard information for registering on grants.gov. The advantage, there's two advantages of registering on the site. One of them is that if you register, then you can get email notifications of opportunities and things of that nature and news from grants.gov. The other thing is that if you intend to submit a federal proposal, you'll need to be registered in grants.gov and have your account linked with the University of Redlands. And there's a little trick to that, which is described in the registration video, which I will get to here on my next slide. Okay, it will ask you for your UEI, which is Universal Something Identifier, which used to be called your DUNS number, which is still your DUNS number from Dun and Bradstreet. The federal government is developing a different system, but they're labeling it UEI now. So you will need this number. This is the University of Redlands UEI. And once you put that into the registration system, it should pop up the University of Redlands organization affiliation with grants.gov. And then I can add you as an affiliate of the university in that system. So you'll need to have that affiliation if you are going to be the project director or a PI, principal investigator on a project that you submit through the federal government. Okay, just get that number from the sponsored programs page on the facts tab. All right. Hope the going back and forth doesn't make you dizzy. All right, the next thing I want to look at is how to search grants in grants.gov. It's a fairly overwhelming list of possibilities that you can encounter here. When you click on the Search Grants tab in grants.gov, you'll see every solicitation that is being offered by the federal government at this time, or even forecasted opportunities. If you look here on and I'll try to, there we go, magnify a little bit. Over here in the opportunity status, it has 342 forecasted opportunities and 2,431 posted that are current opportunities from the feds. You can start narrowing down your search by looking at, one thing I do is to go into eligibility. There is a category for private institutions of higher education, which I think I must have gone by. Here it is. So if you click on that, it'll narrow you down to about 1,400 opportunities. One thing that you'll encounter in the grant seeking world is that they will often list that a nonprofit is eligible for to apply for a grant. And the University of Redlands is a nonprofit, but in a lot of circumstances, and we just encountered this recently with a Fish and Wildlife Service program out of California, is that when the grant eligibility says nonprofit, they often do mean that anything but a university. They don't include universities in that definition. So one thing I do with federal grants is I can check that box that allows me to say that this university is eligible for these grants. And then you can look at, then you can start narrowing down to various categories. So I see I think I've had something about ecology, some suggestions here, so I can narrow into environment. And then you can see all these solicitations that show up here on the list. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find a good one, but I was going to click on one just to show you what a solicitation looks like. Maybe I'll click on next here. Oh, I don't know. USDA, HHS, there's all kinds. HHS has a whole bunch of them. I will try the Same Planet one just to see what that is. Okay, so when you click on this, the solicitation link, you'll see something like this. And the thing to look at when I scan through these, I'm always looking at the closing date for the applications, which is over here. So you have a deadline of June 1st, 2021. So you can figure out how much time you have available before this opportunity is due. And then I look at eligibility. Eligible applicants to make sure that private institutions of higher education can apply, which they should be if you've checked off that box. And then you'll get into program description down here. Sometimes this will be more or less fleshed out. Usually there'll be a link at the bottom somewhere where it gives you the link to additional information. And it'll say see related documents or something like that. And if most times if you click on that, well, it's not going to work in this case. It would take you to the agency site, or it will take you to the application information here. So this will give you, usually it'll be the a description. The application thing here, APS application, should be a description of the program. You don't want to download you could download the full application package, but you don't really need to do that. Okay. So if you find an opportunity that you like, and you want to keep updated on this this opportunity as it progresses, because oftentimes they'll send out updates and notifications about webinars, or even updates or questions that people have asked, summaries of that kind of thing. You can click the subscribe button here and subscribe to this opportunity itself, and you will receive notifications regarding that opportunity as you move forward. Okay. So the search process, this is the search process in grants.gov. You can, type in keywords to see if anything pops up here. For example, someone said census, and you can click search, and then you can find well, some of these, like cell census network, probably is not going to work for a political census, but various types of census opportunities will narrow down here. Okay. Any questions on this search process? It's a fairly simple process, just a lot of complexity and categories. But this is where I would go if I were just in general interested in federal opportunities, and I just want to see, get a broad idea of what kinds of things are available. I keep track of, I'm going to move some stuff here. I keep track of all the opportunities from the system by using this managed subscriptions link that's on the under the Connect tab in grants.gov. And you can subscribe to various types of notifications. I am subscribed to all new grant opportunities, so I get a list every day of every update to the system, so I can keep track, and I just scan through that every morning. As I said before, you can subscribe to specific opportunities. Or the other thing I didn't show is that if you're in the system and you're searching grants, you can specify your criteria which I have lost because I moved out of the system, but I can do a search for private institutions of higher education. I can do the arts, and then I can go ahead and save that search. Okay, I have to log in because I wasn't logged in. And then you can name the search. And it'll keep this search in the system so that you can return back to it. The other thing it does is it subscribes you to notifications of new uh, opportunities that come through with that search criteria. So you can keep track of various types of opportunities that come, and you'll get notified for things that match the criteria that you put in, and that can be useful. Okay, let me go back to my PowerPoint. All right. So I talked about subscribing to have notifications, which is good to keep up on things. This is just an example of what the opportunities look like when they come through. It's fairly gnarly looking. So it's good to have a cup of coffee before you start scanning through your list. If you have a very focused search, you're not going to wind up with something like this. But oftentimes you get many repetitive things because there's updates that happen to opportunities. And so there was a bunch of updates to HHS, some programs today, and this list was particularly crowded with repetitive things. Okay. So, but it's good to get on the list if you're interested in federal things. I'm just going to mention that as I did before, that we use for federal grants, use grants.gov to submit proposals. They have what's called a workspace system, which the workspace is just basically a system where you put together all your PDFs that are required for the federal grant. And generally I do that for the proposer, but it can also be a collaborative kind of thing where I can set up a workspace in the system, and then the proposer can upload their own documents. They can become a collaborator on that, and they can upload and put their documents in there. In the final analysis, sponsored programs has to submit the proposal for a federal project. So I have to go through and validate all the documents that go in, all the PDFs that have been put together, and there's certain tricks to it that can create stumbles. So it's you really have to pay attention to how the thing is put together, and it takes submitting a few of these to understand how the whole system works. But anyway, I was just going to make a mention of that that's part of the whole process here. Okay, so that's grants.gov. Going to move to NSF, and you can go straight to the agency websites to look for funding. And for some reason, I'm jammed. Let's see what's going on. Uh-oh, hold on a second. Okay, let's see if I can, there we go. NSF, you can click on the funding tab and do searches for funding within their system. Okay, you can just click in a keyword here. Let's see, I'll just put deforestation in here and see what it comes up with. It comes up with one hit on a cultural anthropology program, doctoral dissertation research improvement grant. The other thing you can do is click down into the research areas, biological sciences, geosciences, integrative activities, or you can look at special programs for undergraduate students. There are research programs specifically for undergraduate research, even particularly some that are designed for institutions like ours that are primarily teaching institutions. So there's some opportunities there. But when you click on any of these categories, you can visit the specific programs that they are listing. So I will just go into, let's try, I don't know, biological sciences. I don't know where. Let's try geosciences. Okay, then you'll get a whole list of the programs that are funded in that under that category. Okay, and then each of these links will take you to a page that describes the how to go about what the program is about and what their deadlines are. A very important thing is to look at the contact information. Okay, so I would encourage you, if you are interested in an NSF program or pretty much from any funder, if you have a name of a program officer that you can contact, it's really good to go ahead and contact the folks and bounce an idea off of them. A one-pager is a good way, 1 or 2 page description or abstract of your proposal is a good way to get some feedback on whether your idea is acceptable or not acceptable, but is targeted for their program. And then over here, the RFPs or the solicitations are listed. They're in NSF. It starts with the year that the solicitation was written, and then it has a number associated with it. So this is 25-515. The solicitation will be the detailed description of everything related to the program. Okay, and I'm gonna, this one just happens to be for EarthCube, which was one I was looking at this winter. It had a deadline of on Tuesday. You get a synopsis of the program, the contact information for the various types of program officers at NSF. It's important to look at the division that they're from, because your proposal might target different divisions. Oftentimes at NSF, there are various divisions and directorates that cooperate with each other, and your proposal may fit 1 or 2 of those. And so you will try to target your communications to someone that has expertise in your area. My eye usually goes straight to the money when I'm looking at things, looking at the total funding amount here under the award information. The estimated number of awards gives you an idea. You can figure out how much money you can go for, and then also your competition. Low number of awards like this means that competition is probably going to be high, and so your odds of getting the grant might be lower. Eligibility is very important to look at. This one is appropriate for us, IHEs, institutions of higher education. So you want to see whether, usually at NSF, there aren't any eligibility problems for a university, but sometimes there can be programs that are targeted at certain types of groups. And then it goes through and it gives you details on proposal preparation, how the proposals are reviewed, and all the detailed information that I would start working with someone on if they decided to go for a federal grant, and make sure that they satisfy all these requirements. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint to see where I'm at. Any questions or comments so far? Okay, nsf.gov.
Hey, Steve, it's Mark.
Yeah, hi, Mark.
Are we in HBCU yet? And does that open up more opportunities?
Well, HSI, I think you mean.
That's right. Yeah, sorry.
We'd have to do a lot more recruitment to get to the HBCU status. HSI, we are actually applying for it this month. The portal finally opened up just on Monday. So we will be applying for eligibility. A new Katie and Yen will be putting and I will be putting the data together for the application. Right now, we've been declared ineligible based on the previous data. However, we're going to make our case, and then I'm not sure how the decision gets made, but that does open up, a whole wealth of possibilities for various agencies. In fact, NSF has an HSI category that you can go after for STEM education. NEH also has an HSI category. And so there's just various possibilities that open up if we get that status. And as far as we can tell, our statistics say that we should qualify, but we'll have to see what the Department of Education says after we submit the work. And that goes in, it has to go in by the end of this month. So I would assume we'll have a determination by end of April or May or something like that. Okay, good question. All right.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay, I think I've moved ahead. Okay, so that's NSF. You can go, NEH is another federal funder that people go for here. We just had a really good session with the Humanities Advisory Group. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about NEH here, but at NEH, you start at the Grants tab. And that's the wrong one. Where did I think I'm going to close something here. I think I'll have to put in, I think I lost NEH. Okay. NEH is a much smaller agency than NSF or NIH, so I'll be talking about in a second. But they have a number of programs that are really suitable for a place like the University of Redlands. So you can get into searching, doing a grant search, just clicking on grant search, and then you can look through the various programs they have. You can put in search terms. There aren't that many programs at NEH, so I would just encourage you to browse through NEH and take a look at ones that seem of interest to you. Here we are, here's the awards for faculty at Hispanic serving institutions. So that's the one that we would be eligible for if we applied, if we are successful with our application. I'm going to click on this humanities initiatives at HSIs here. So this is what the NEH RFP looks like. You have the grant snapshot on the side. It's the maximum award amount. NEH actually provides a lot of support on their site for preparing grants. They will give you sample proposals. They will actually review drafts for you. So when you look at NEH, it says optional draft due. So if you get your draft to a program officer by April 8th for a May 20th deadline, they will take a look at it and give you commentary on how to improve it. And then they have pretty good detail too about project start dates, the expected project start date if you get funded. And then an important thing is the contact information. All of the divisions at NIH will just have a general email address for the division that bursts to the program officers. And like today we were talking to Digital Humanities. She said that there were 5 people on their team. So I assume that email would burst to the 5 program officers, and then one of them responds. I've had mixed success with using email addresses like that with NEH, but sometimes I've gotten really immediate responses, and sometimes I've had to prod a number of times to get a response. So it really depends. If you're at NEH, the funding opportunity or the request for proposal looks like this. It's a notice of funding opportunity. And then they'll have other resources like FAQs, Another really important one is a list of recently funded grants in this program. Okay, and then these are the samples, so you can take a look at proposals that have been submitted successfully to the program, which are really useful in helping you determine how to structure your proposal, and also in understanding, whether you have something that might be of interest to the program. Like the others, a fairly technical document with your application due dates. It'll have all of the stuff that you're interested in. The eligibility information is important. One thing to look at on NEH proposals is whether there's cost sharing required. Usually, most federal proposals, but most federal grantors do not require cost sharing anymore, but NEH still does request it on some programs, and so it's a good thing to look at, and that's something I work with people on coming up with their cost share on these types of programs. But the NEH RFP will go through the specifics about what you should submit and how to structure your proposal and what it should contain, the project narrative, and then other supplementary documentation that gets put together. So, and all of these become separate PDFs that go into your application package that goes in on grants.gov. Okay, so it's good to read through the RFP very carefully, and you're considering a program. Okay, that's NEH. I'm going to go to NIH, the big funder on the block. Probably, I don't know what the scale. I mean, the NSF, many NSFs would fit into NIH. So NIH is a big funder, and in a lot of cases, I think people might think here at the University of Redlands that it may not be a good target for the type of work we do, but I've gotten funded by NIH a number of times on education projects, and so there are opportunities out there. You just have to look for them and figure out if you can have a health-related angle to something that you're doing, and then look for an appropriate institute. As implied by its name, the National Institutes of Health are made up of, I forget how many institutes there are now, but each of them has their own funding priorities, and they have different types of funding levels. Some of them are fairly large, some of them are a lot smaller. So it's good to get to know, to find a target institute that you would target your work at, and your proposal at, and then work to get something funded. So if you click on the grants and funding link, actually, I'm not sure how I wound up here, but let me go back to the main page here. Okay. Click on grants and funding, and then find funding. And you'll get into, and you have to click find funding again, and you'll get into their search system. It's a very complex system, and I won't get, they have different types of funding mechanisms, depending on the letters that they start with. And then there are parent announcements, and there are all kinds of variations. So one suggestion I would have, if you think you might have a project that might be related to NIH, even health or environmental, they have a National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. You could just start typing in some search terms, like I could type in homeless, and then you can just see what kinds of hits you get on various types of RFPs that they have. Like the other agencies, you'll have this list of requests for proposals. You click on that, and you'll get to the specifics of the program information, the deadlines, NIH usually has multiple deadlines during the year, quarterly deadlines for their stuff, and then you have to work through Grants.gov to submit your proposal. If you have any interest in a health-related topic, yeah, please communicate with me. I'd be happy to help you try to sort through this system and figure out what might work for you, or what some possibilities would be, because I've had some experience working with NIH, and I've been a reviewer on some programs that they have. So I have got a pretty good idea of how it works, but it's very big and very complicated. So there's lots of opportunities there, but I wouldn't use that to discourage. I wouldn't discourage you from going after that. Okay. Okay. Another thing I was going to show is on NEIH. Stumbling over my words today. They have something called report.nih.gov, and this is a good strategy with any funder, is to look at what they've funded in the past. So the report system, you can click on their map and look at projects by state. Okay, and then I think you can narrow down according to categories and some other things that you can use to try to filter stuff out. You can even go down to congressional district. I forget what ours is. CA, it's not 13, is it? I forget. But you can look at what has been funded at various institutions to see if the kind of work that you're interested in has been funded. Because, if it has been funded, that increases the likelihood that something you're interested in would receive some interest from NIH. All right. So that's NIH. And, the point here is that for federal agencies, you can go to grants.gov, which is the clearinghouse for all kinds of stuff. But you can also go straight to the agencies and poke around and look for stuff. Whoa, sorry. Trying to close Windows so that my browser starts moving a little faster. All right. Let me go back to my PowerPoint because I skipped ahead. So I talked about NEH, contacting program officers, always good. NIH, find funding. Okay, and then report. All right. For other types of grants, I'm kind of a low budget operation. So I look for ways of finding opportunities that are not costly. And one that I've fastened onto is called Grant Station, which is a clearinghouse of all kinds of funding opportunities, but it is particularly good for looking at private foundations and other types of funders like that. To go to Grant Station, just type in grantstation.com and you'll wind up at a site that looks like this. Grant Station has some public resources which are useful. The most useful thing to an outsider who has not paid for their service is the Grant Station Insider. And they release a newsletter every month, or actually more than, every week, in which they list funding opportunities, which can be of interest to you. Okay, so you can scan these yourself to see whether there's things that are relevant. You can get on their list. So I encourage you to subscribe to services like this, because it'll just get you on a list where you'll get a weekly email from Grant Station, which you can kind of see what's out there, what kinds of programs are being funded, and what kinds of projects, and get an idea of the whole landscape of the thing. The other thing that Grant Station offers right now is COVID-related funding, which is something that I was monitoring fairly significantly last summer when things were really heating up with the pandemic. This is a long list of opportunities that are related to funding programs related to COVID-19 interventions of various types. So you can take a look at that. If you pay for GrantStation, and one thing I want to emphasize is that I would consider GrantStation to not be out of range for a department or even an individual, possibly. It's $169 a year or 2 years for $219. This is the subscription that I have that I work with. What that allows you to do is to get into their grantor database. Excuse me. And let's see. They have various ways that you can search for funders. One thing you can do is to look at their, the areas of interest that they cover. And they also have fairly detailed information about the search terms that are used in their database. So if you're trying to really hone into something, a particular topic, it's good to use their search terms the way they are. But I'm usually looking for broader kinds of searches than very targeted things. So you can go in with their Find Grant Makers capabilities, excuse me, and define your geographic scope. If you want to, you can go national. And as soon as you start clicking the boxes in the search service, it starts going through the database and identifying possibilities. Or you can go, I can cancel out of my USA search there, and then I can go in and look for state grant makers that are possible. So I would look here for California, and it would identify all the state possibilities. I can look at areas of interest. Okay. If I want to go into something about education, I can go into higher education here. And it'll start showing funders that will deal with that. Okay. Then I can drill into the funders themselves. And then you can look here, once you get your list, you can look at very specific, the specific communities that they serve is in the right-hand column, their geographic focus. So in a lot of cases, you would be looking for funders that have a Southern California focus. Here's one primarily in the greater Los Angeles area. You can click on the funder and get a description of what they do and some statistics about them, contact information. They'll give what they will accept. One thing about GrantStations that they claim is that they only list active funders, so funders that are actively soliciting proposals. So they won't give you funders who are not accepting proposals in their list. So any of these should be good targets. They also have they have a link. I haven't used this. Member insights. People can post their experiences with the funder. You can look at the grants they've awarded, and then you can go to their website to look at their funding information. Okay. If you have the subscription, you can also you can save. Well, there's two things. You can save your criteria. You can save the search that you did. So I'm saving a higher education California search here, and I can just save that, and you can go back to that over and over if you want to. The other thing you can do is save the funder itself in your dashboard. And once you do that, it puts it in your dashboard of potential funders. So you get a dashboard up here. It keeps track of your saved grant makers, and any grant maker that's saved in your system If there is any updates or new RFPs concerning that funder, you get an email. So I get 2 or 3 emails a week about the grant makers that I've saved. And this is my list of funders that I've found that might be relevant to you of our faculty. So I'm not necessarily encouraging you to go out to go get Grant Station. In fact, if you come in and talk to me and you're interested in private foundation funding, this is what I would start looking in. The other thing I can do is coordinate with Anu in the foundation's office, who has another database that she works with. And once we have an idea of what your research is or what you're interested in, what kind of project you'd like to have funded, we can go through and put together a list of funders for you that would be possible. And then we can start getting, communicating with those funders or putting proposals together. Okay. I'm yapping more than I thought I would. So I'm going to move on here a little bit. So Grant Station's a really good resource. Low cost, relatively low cost. I suppose if we had some interest from folks, I could see about getting the institutional level. I'm not sure what that costs, but anyway. All right. So Sanjeet's pointing out that I'm probably violating the license. Well, anyway, I will work on that. Grant Station. Go through my Philanthropy News Digest is another one that I use that I think is useful for looking for grants. Okay, Philanthropy News Digest has a list of RFPs. You can go to their RFP page and you can find RFPs, and these are generally for private foundations and corporations. Okay, and you can narrow it down by subjects. For example, I can go into higher education. I can do keyword searches on Philanthropy Digest. Okay, and this can be a source of possibilities for you. If you click on one of these, it'll give you information about the funder. Okay, it'll link you to their complete RFP on their site. And from there, you can look at their grant guidelines and stuff of that nature. Okay, you can also subscribe to their alerts. And get a pretty much it's almost a daily email from Philanthropy Digest. Okay, other search services are fairly expensive. Well, this is a free service that's done as a public service. Candid also, the Philanthropy, well, Candid, I forget what the name of the big service is connected with Candid, but has a professional service, which is quite a bit more pricey. Okay. The other thing you can do is to look at individual sites and get on lists. I encourage people to get on mailing lists of particular foundations that they are interested in. Okay, just some examples of sites that I am on their lists are the Annenberg Foundation, Mickelson Foundation, which has competitions that come about fairly frequently. Another one in the School of Education gets targeted is the Spencer Foundation. Yeah, the Foundation Center, Candid Foundation Center, GuideStar. Okay. William T. Grant Foundation. They all have mailing lists that you can get on. All right, so that's pretty much it. Yeah, I was going to review what I use to look for possibilities. The upcoming brown bags, going to get into funding ideas, talking about ideas that you have and how to take your idea from a kind of a general foggy thing in your head to a specific goal and specific objectives and milestones that you need to get to the proposal stage, and also to prepare you for developing a budget. And then and that will be in 2 weeks on the 19th, and I'll have an assignment for people to do if they're interested in that one, which I'll get to on the next slide. Um, the last one for the spring will be held on April 9th, and Katie Milsom will be talking about proposal budgets. And really what I need to meet with Katie about what we're going to do on that session, but my vision for that session would be basically how to talk, we'd talk about how to go from your foggy idea to becoming specific, to with specific objectives and fundable things, to actually outlining what those are going to cost in the proposal and making those as concrete and defensible as possible. So the proposal, the budgeting process is a really important part of the proposal, the generation process, because that's where you really kind of test the reality of your project idea and how to go from a dream to a something that a funder would feel that you could accomplish. All right, so then the homework part. I've created a form that's now linked to the sponsored programs page. The link is here, and I can stick the I think I clicked on it, or what did I do? I think I went ahead. It keeps going ahead. I think I ended my my presentation somehow. But anyway, the link is there. I can stick it in the chat. It's just a little form to help you kind of go through your idea and maybe ask you a few questions about your project idea and move from a general idea to something a little bit more specific. And if folks do this before the next session, I'll have some meat to work with and talk to you about. All right, I'm ready to take any questions. That's pretty much all my session is today. And if you have any questions, you can hang on here for a second. I actually have to run to another meeting with Katie and Anu. But if you have any other questions, or if you have any project ideas you'd like to pursue, let me know and we can start talking. All right, well, thank you very much for coming.